I gotta be honest, even I was a bit of a naysayer early on. And the challenge with AI is that if you try it and you try to do something today, let's look at particularly last year when things were not all these LLMs were geniuses yet. You might try something and it not do a very good job and you could write off AI, but 3 months later it can do the thing that it wasn't able to do before. And if you haven't tried it again and you're not staying up to date on how fast this stuff is going, you might be a naysayer for the wrong reasons.
Welcome to the Stantec Design Hive, where we chat with architects, designers, engineers, and collaborators about the big ideas shaping sustainable, equitable, and resilient communities. In this episode, Design Hive host John Dugan sits down with architect and technologist Brendan Mullins, Stantec's discipline leader for design computing. Together, they explore how emerging tools from computational design to AI are changing not only what we design, but how we bring those ideas to life. They dive into what design computing really means today and how it's enhancing design capabilities and what all of this means for the future of the industry. Let's get started.
We kind of gave a little highlight of what you do there, Brendan. And I know I've probably made you do this several times, but tell us what you do these days and how you got into this role with Stantec.
Yeah, so I'm an architect in San Francisco. I think of myself first and foremost as an architect. I have been at Stantec most of my career, and it's been a good ride. They've afforded me the opportunity to work on a vast array of different building types, from border crossings to hospitals to museums. And along the way, I've always taken technology. I've always been passionate about technology and either acted as a technology leader on the projects or just a technology guru, whether that meant things that were kind of standard course of business, i.e. BIM, or whether it was more computational design, visualization, AI these days, etc. So I'm kind of a blend of the two. I think of architect and technologist. I think it was in college, I was always passionate about these things, having, focused a lot of my college time on computational design and rendering workflows. But then it wasn't until I got into practice a couple of years in on the Cleveland Clinic Cancer Building that we were designing healthcare mock-ups. These are essentially cardboard one-to-one scale rooms. And at home, I was either playing video games or seeing in the news that there were Oculus VR headsets coming into existence. And, I'm at work 3D modeling what's going to be built out of cardboard and then seeing video games and VR headsets outside of work. And that finally clicked in my head that those two things could be married, that VR could be used for healthcare mock-ups, something we still do today, 10 years later. This was many years ago. And I think that was kind of the beginning of my journey within professional practice of merging these two things in a design-centric way.
Yeah, I think I might have even heard of you many years ago when someone was talking about, there's this guy that's working on the Cleveland Clinic and he just mailed, a set of VR headset to the Cleveland Clinic so they could look at the model. And I was like, that's pretty cool. Tell us, for those that are unfamiliar, what design computing is. Like, what does that term sort of mean? And then I've got sort of a follow-up question being, what's an example of what design computing sort of can deliver? What can it manifest that wouldn't have manifested in the same way?
Well, design computing fundamentally is a design technology group. So we're looking at any ways we can use technology to empower designers. Within Stantec, we have a digital practice group that's heavily focused on managing big project data or BIM and delivery workflows, and we partner very closely with them. Our group is made up of visualization, AI, and computational design experts. So that gives you maybe a little bit of the categories of technology we're focused on. AI ends up being part of everything, right? AI isn't really its own category anymore. It's foundational to a lot of the other categories that we're used to. And our team is built entirely of practitioners. So everybody's expected to be working on projects and innovating on projects and leading projects towards future ways of delivery. Sometimes that manifests as simply automation work, which we do work on. And sometimes it can be a lot more than that. It can be looking at building performance, structural engineering criteria, virtual reality and visualization. So it kind of runs the gambit of maybe a client forward tools such as renderings and VR to practice forward tools like optimizing steel layouts to an automation tool, which might just be something as simple as populating rooms with furniture in mass, right, with a click of a button. So a pretty versatile group, and that's hopefully what we're building is a group of passionate technology-focused practitioners who can jump between a lot of different technologies, which gives them additional power when they're on projects that they can adapt.
Excellent, excellent. And I know I thought it would be nice if you could sort of share a recent example of what computational or design computing can do. I know there was an example that I heard you talk about on a few calls. So I'm leading the witness a little bit here, but yeah, can you tell us a little bit about that recent design computing project?
We work on a wide range of projects, everything to something that's rectangular to something that's the opposite of rectangular. I've spent many years on the Lucas Museum of Narrative Art, which was kind of a tour de force in all things design technology for visualization and computation, etc. And coming off of that project, trying to find like the next thing, right? How can we take what we learned there and push it forward and further? The project we worked on recently is called Paradise Island, the Royal Caribbean's Paradise Island. For like simpler terms, it's a giant tiki bar in the Bahamas in Nassau. And it's envisioned to be a very complex curved structure with kind of two wings of kind of folded geometry. Essentially, it's a lot of double curves, right? Curved roofs, curved walls. Architecturally, it's challenging to implement curved architecture generally. Now, when you try to do it in the Bahamas with low skilled labor, right, on a very fast timeline. I mean, we essentially took the whole thing from design to construction documents in 4 to 6 weeks. I think it was 45 days. I think we did that, working days, and it was constructed within a year. So it's extremely fast timelines. You have to start to think of new ways to deliver. So first of all, we use technology just at its best so we can move fast. So making sure we understand software and interoperability between different modeling software. But you got to have to go further. You have to understand how the thing goes together and start using the technology to help with the design process and the analysis process. For instance, we designed a structure that the steel skeleton was to be prefabricated in the States. So that is your kind of highly manufactured, super low tolerance, perfectly curved members to exactly the specifications that we model them to. We used computation to make sure that those members could be of the right size to fit for shipping. They were the right size to be bent. So we're using our computational analysis to make sure that we're designing a system that can be manufactured and shipped properly, right? That is actually feasible. And then you had to clad this skeleton in something. So you can have the bones and then you have the skin of the structure. The skin of the structure, we decided not to prefabricate because of how the labor on site, they don't have laser scanning technology. They don't very well, right? It's essentially a team of carpenters, a very large team of good carpenters, but we wouldn't say this is high-tech construction going on out there. So we had to kind of think outside the box. So we decided to clad the whole structure in very bendable materials. So we're talking 1/4-inch plywood or 1/4-inch interior sheathing, because that can bend. When things are only 1/4-inch thick, you can actually just push and bend them onto shapes, but they can only bend so much. So for instance, we could use our software analysis tools that we develop in-house to analyze, are all the sheets of plywood that we're telling these builders they're just going to push down on the skeleton and nail down to the bend, can they bend that much without breaking? And so we're even taking a high-tech approach to analyzing low-tech material choices, right? To make sure that when it goes out in the field, we don't need to tell them to test it, right? We already know, the computer's already justified our decisions to make sure that it can be built. I mean, this does two things. It makes sure you have a good project that can be, built on time and manufactured and assembled, but also it's great for the client because it's de-risking the project, right? I mean, projects like this have a very high level of risk and uncertainty. Again, going to remote locations to build, you don't have the same supply chain you even have in the States. The materials can't be swapped out and brought to site quick. They can't go to the local hardware store. They can't go to the local building distribution center. Building material distribution place. Like, things have to be done right the first time, or else you might have to wait for 2 weeks for the hurricane to pass for the barge to come deliver more materials. So there's even more pressure to get things right the first time. And I think that's where it's an interesting blend of like technology proving out that we can fabricate ahead of time. Yeah, and just makes for a successful project on a tight timeline.
Very cool. Yeah, I think I hadn't even sort of wrapped my head around the idea that, oh, it's being built in an island, in an island where not everything is available, and yeah, the skill set's a little bit limited. We're going to go there and talk about AI a little bit. I am coming off, not too long ago, talking with the Idea Exchange winners on a previous episode of the Design Hive. Where are we seeing, I know these things change so fast, but where are we sort of seeing these AI tools applied in the design process? How are we using those technologies day to day, and sort of how do you see that moving forward? What's sort of shaping that? I've got a bunch of AI related questions, but I'll start with that.
AI is everything right now. It's the talk everywhere. Client and design side a lot. And of course, across our entire culture. I mean, I got to be honest, even I was a bit of a naysayer early on. And the challenge with AI is that if you try it and you try to do something today, let's look at particularly last year when things were not all these LLMs were geniuses yet. You might try something and it not do a very good job and you could write off AI, but 3 months later, it can do the thing that it wasn't able to do before. And if you haven't tried it again and you're not staying up to date on how fast this stuff is going, you might be a naysayer for the wrong reasons, right? You're kind of a naysayer based on a past memory. But this past memory only needs to be a few months old, right? And we're like not used to adapting to something that goes that fast, right? Like our opinions of BIM or other software have happened over decades. And the architectural profession broadly has not changed very much over the years, right? I mean, we create a set of drawings and we stamp them and we give them over the fence. They get permitted and then they get built. And that concept, we essentially work the same way we've worked for not just decades, generations. This technology doesn't move at that pace. It moves at lightning speed. So just as a foundational point to make, it's going really, really fast. And we have to be ready to adapt. Generally, what I'm seeing, for better or for worse, is a lot of questions about how it's going to make us go faster. And I think everybody across our entire culture, right, and across the world is curious, right, what this could do. Is it going to be positive or is it going to be negative broadly from speed, right? I mean, if everything happens so fast, does that mean we have more work to do? Does it mean there's less work to do? Does it mean we do better work? Does it mean we're doing faster work of a different quality? I think there's big foundational questions. And it's interesting because these questions transcend our industry, which is rare, right? I don't think a lot of big topics like this come into our industry frequently, something this transformative. So it's an interesting time. It's a time that there's immense opportunity, but also there could be a lot of pressure. And I think our profession has to be ready for it. But that's maybe my 30,000 feet take on, there's a lot happening. But if we want to get down maybe a little more in the weeds, the thing I think is amazing right now about AI, which is not an original opinion, is the idea that it can code well. And forever, architects and designers have barely had development staff available. I mean, Stantec is a very big organization, so we have in-house developers. But if you look at a 20-person to 100-person firm, right, maybe they'll have a person if they're lucky. They don't have people dedicated to building custom tools. Even across our organization where we're privileged to have such, we don't have thousands, right? I mean, we're not a software company. But what's interesting right now is that it's essentially giving you a very, very good developer at the palm of your fingertips for a few dozen bucks a month, right? And everybody all of a sudden has access to I just have a custom software developer on my desktop. Now, do architects and designers know what to do with that, or engineers? I mean, most don't yet. They're in all-day meetings with a custom software developer waiting to be given a task. What does that mean for the profession is interesting. We've been making huge gains in the last year. I mean, it's transformative in the last year how good it's getting, mostly to augment our ability inside of computational design. Because that's where my group is at least focused. I'm sure if you're a developer, you have your own, right? You're just using it, just code, just sheer coding power. But we're not necessarily great coders. We can visually program, which is connecting blocks of code. I won't go into it, but it's kind of a visual way to program. Now we can write custom parts of that very quickly, or we can write entire computational design scripts in like 20 minutes, 30 minutes. And it's supercharging our ability to create new tools. Some of the tools we build are for testing performance of the building, just for automation of production workflows. It depends. They can do a lot of different things. But I think it's just allowing us to do what might have taken us a week can be done in an hour. And especially in an industry where fees can be tight, time is tight. It's not every job that's going to say, hey, computational designer, go spend 50 hours designing this new tool for me. Even if it will save me time, that's a gamble not everybody's willing to make. Now, what if I tell them, well, you give me an hour, we'll probably get you this custom tool built. And all of a sudden, I think the calculation's different for every project manager in the industry, right? That they could have access to custom solutions at all times. I'd expect this to reach really a fever pitch this year, and my group's going to make sure we're in front of it and we're staying in front of it because it's transformative.
Is this the vibe coding that we were planning to talk about? Is this the same thing, or
Yeah, I mean, vibe coding is essentially just the idea of using an LLM to have it generate code based on normal text prompts, right? So for me, I'm not a developer, but I've been able to make several pieces of several tools and other things, and I can make them in 20 minutes just by asking, right? As long as they're small enough right now, the LLMs can do it without mistakes in the first attempt. Now, if you're trying to do something more complex, you might need to have some basic understanding of development. It depends how complex you want to go. But like I said about things changing so fast, if today the thing cannot write Revit, which is our foundational BIM software across the entire industry, I don't know. What if it could write Revit in 4 years? What if you could just prompt a drafting software into existence? I mean, I used to think that was a crazy idea. I don't know. I'm not so sure anymore how fast everything's going. It's possible. What does that mean?
You touched on this earlier in terms of the design industry sort of being on the frontier or connected to this massive cultural change or industrial change, which I do think you're right. That is kind of unusual. It's sort of, maybe it's happened a few times, but not to this extent. But from a insider point of view in the architecture industry, we charge for time, right? We often charge for time, and now technology has sort of changed the way the relationship between time and work product and output, right? So is that something you think is going to need to be reassessed, or is that a challenge that is sort of looming on the horizon for the whole industry, right? I guess the side question is the time used for other things? So rather than the time being used to create the visualization of a project, are you spending more time iterating? Are you spending more time researching the context, researching the users? Does it change the balance of where we spend our time, or is it just compressing the whole thing?
Yeah.
But it might be impossible to answer that now, right?
Eric Cecil, who's a professor and an AI thought leader, who's also a friend of mine. And I remember when I first met him years ago, he was bringing up this point. And I really hadn't heard many people talk about this problem, honestly. I think AI hadn't fully permeated into general culture in a way that had allowed enough architects to consider this problem. And amazingly, I mean, even this week, I'm getting more and more just normal practitioners are asking me this question now. And clients are asking too, can we go faster? And then our side saying they're starting to see the writing on the wall, right? What does that mean if I'm just going faster? Now, first of all, there's only modest evidence showing that that's happening right now, right? We're building tools, we're doing certain assignments faster. We're not doing the whole thing faster yet. I don't know. I guess it depends whether you're an optimist or a pessimist of technology. The optimist in me would say humans have continued to get more productive for millennia, and technology's made us more productive, and we've only figured out ways to create more value, right? More money, better health outcomes, better living outcomes. Just generally, the human race has done nothing but grow and become more productive and live longer. But then maybe the pessimist would say technology's never been a competitor, right? In the same way that super intelligence could be a competitor. Definitely could be a competitor in white collar jobs, and maybe robots for blue collar. It's interesting. I don't think anybody has the answer right now, but what I would say about this topic is that without answering it, which is maybe the boring answer, but it's getting talked about everywhere right now, which is in its of itself, I think, really interesting. This used to be a fringe AI technology debate, and now it's happening with owners, with practitioners, at conferences, out in the open. What is the value of the profession if this is true? The most important thing we should do, because we're never going to design our own AI systems right now, right? This technology needs billions of dollars in investment. So we're essentially at the mercy of OpenAI and Anthropic and others. We will use their technology, right? Just because the investment required. But what we can do, the optimist in me, it says that we can plan. We can start looking for the type of staff who can synthesize technology in practice, i.e., that's kind of the team I'm trying to build. People who are willing to break out and try new things with this cutting edge technology, but do it from a practice forward mindset so they can wield it to its greatest potential right now to stay ahead of the curve. And there could be a future where all architects are required to be that kind of person, that they all have to be AI experts at the same time and wield this at another level. So yeah, the optimist would me and say, we just have to learn a new skill and a new way to go. And the only way to stay ahead of it right now is to know how to use the tech.
Drilling down a little bit, one of the things that sort of occurred to me working with the Idea Exchange guys is that the designers can sort of create visualizations at any point in the process now, which wasn't really the typically how design was being done for a long time. Are there things like that sort of, they kind of upend just the day-to-day, sequence of design processes? How do we sort of deal with that when a client could say, well, what does it look like now? What does it look like now? It's sort of the sort of logical flow of the design process. I guess I'm sort of wondering, okay, if you can sort of create visualizations at any point, what does that mean for collaboration with the client?
I got to be honest, I think this is a place where our profession could be a whole lot better.
Okay.
Better in that from a project management standpoint, I feel like we're constantly providing more services. Right? It's mixed up with the T&M thing, right? Like essentially we're expected to provide more and more output in less and less time with arguably less and less fee. And we've just kind of said okay to that, because if we remain a time-based structure, but we're, to the earlier point, technology's made us more and more and more and more productive. We're just giving more and more and more and more in the same amount of time, which is interesting, right? Maybe you would argue we should be basing things more on value than on time. And that's where this thing gets a little mixed up. Because to that point, real-time visualization, which is essentially kind of turning a 3D model into a video game you can walk around, for the most simple form of it. We've been using it for, I don't know, maybe a little less than a decade. It's been around. So it's essentially allowed you to, instead of taking one still rendering, one 3D modeled render view that used to take overnight, used to take days back in the day to render one view. Now it's 60 frames a second, right? Or 30 frames a second. You're doing 30 renderings every second. You just walk around and wherever you leave the camera is where you can take a screenshot. What that's meant is, I was on a recent project. This is a medium-sized project and we're putting out dozens of renderings. And years ago, we would have charged $5,000 per rendering. That would have cost tens of thousands, maybe even, could go well over $100,000 for the amount of work we did. And that would have been an additional service, never included base services, right? In less than 10 years, it's gone from a client might get one or two renderings for a high dollar price to we need dozens of them. That's part of the design process. We just expect it. It's interesting that these technologies allow us to have a larger output, but that doesn't necessarily mean we've gotten very good at doing timing right. Sometimes I don't think we've adapted fast enough to the new expectations, the new skill sets that are needed. It requires project managers to constantly rethink what kind of staff they need, and when they need them. It was only a few years ago, you didn't need to schedule somebody's time for 30 renderings. These renderings they're still not instantaneous. You still have to dress the model up and make sure everything's perfect. I don't know. It's interesting. And it's kind of the same thing goes for AI. It's like, it's almost like it's like the technology is going faster than the business models are ready to adapt to.
I think that's absolutely true. And I think there's going to be some kind of adjustment at some point. One thing I've heard you talk about is that AI has revealed some sort of looming behind the scenes issues like the importance of organized design data. So if all of a sudden your design data is much more important, perhaps more important than you realized, what does that mean for for design firms.
Yeah, I think this is another thing where like the AI last year could not read an architectural drawing at all. This year it's starting to get a lot better at it. And there's AI models that are kind of combination text and vision models that are being able to do it. AI cannot make a construction drawing yet, but at this rate, I have no doubt that it will one day, maybe imminently. Yeah, I guess there's all these questions of where this stuff's going to be trained on and where it's going to come from. I think the interesting thing again about the fact that we're in the middle of like an industrial shift or like whatever we want to call it, right? This larger AI conversation is we get to watch how it's playing out in industries that do have the big bucks to fight over things, right? Like music and like film, where folks like Disney or large owners of music libraries, right? People who own the rights to songs. We have AI models getting trained on stuff people own. And folks are starting to go to bat over it. The big companies that are willing to put up that fight because their livelihood depends on it and they have kind of the weight to do so. It'll be interesting if that reckoning happens with us, right? Like if an AI is generating construction drawings, does it have to be trained on professional drawings that it needs to pay to have access to, right? And then you look at big companies like us, we have access to thousands of drawing sets that you could train an AI model on. We maybe don't have the resources to train that model right now, but owning data is important. Even being able to maybe sell that data at a later date to help train a model, right? Or a partner to train models. Many of our designs we don't even own. Right. Some the owner may own. And then there's the complications just of legality around our industry, right? Who owns the data and what can we do with it? Final outcome of all this is it produces the final drawing set, which, right? Like that's the final thing we do. We make drawings. All the big firms in the industry need to get its data in order and take a stance on who owns it and who should own it, right? So that maybe that's mixed up in that T&M thing, the right to own the designs or to own the IP. Because if a third-party model comes out of left field in 5 years, it can just draw an entire building for you. It's going to get hairy.
Yeah, that's interesting because almost, the architecture as intellectual property is not really discussed a lot. The rolled up,
Yeah,
the drawings get rolled up or they put in the flat file, or it comes up probably when the coffee table books are issued, or that sort of thing.
exactly.
But the idea that you put it in digital form, all of a sudden it is really valuable, and there's AI has sort of transformed all that material.
Yeah.
That's wild. Definitely something I had not thought about. I think I've even asked you this before, and I sort of know the answer, but is this an exciting time for you, or is this you seem to be excited with they're a little bit anxious, but in a generally in a positive way?
Yeah, it's so exciting. I mean, you have to, it's impossible not to be excited. I'm spoiled too. I live in the Bay Area and I run into people and go to drinks with people who are at these major organizations that are building the AIs or building the hardware for the AIs. It's exciting, and it's exciting to hear from them, right? About how excited they are, right? Because I mean, like I said, there's a few gigantic companies that are shaking up the entire world right now. It's great to be able to learn from them and to listen to their leaders on podcasts or otherwise, because it gives you insight. It's amazing to be able to listen to a tech giant, right? I don't know, pick a random person, the head of NVIDIA or Anthropic or otherwise, and know that this person has a direct impact on you potentially, on your entire career, and your entire industry. So it's a really interesting time. I'm excited, and I think architects, the design, all designers, engineers, architects, etc., have so much value to provide. We spend lifetimes learning this knowledge, and our ability to synthesize everything from a client need to constructability problems to price, etc., everything still needs a human interaction, and everybody still wants to interact with humans in the end of the day. So I don't think the robots are taking over tomorrow. I think it's just a great time to take automation, AI, computation, these kind of things more seriously. They've been relegated kind of to technology, small technology groups over the decades, not fully integrated practice-wide in most firms. I'd say only a few firms have really succeeded in making kind of design technology and these kind of ideas like central to the way they deliver. And many of them are very famous for it, right? It's taken them to new heights to design impossible things. So it's exciting for me because I think now it's time for everybody to take this seriously. And it'll open up new careers for technology-focused practitioners and hopefully offer us the ability to make Like we talked about Paradise Island, really interesting, complex things on lower budgets. Maybe hopefully we can bring more interesting designs into the world and make them more accessible. So I'm excited. I'm an optimist, but without talking about the pessimistic side, I don't think you can form final opinions.
Yeah, I'm gonna just try to absorb as much of your optimism as I can today. But Brendan, yeah, thank you so much for doing this, and we will, I'm certain, check in with you in 6 months when everything has changed all over again.
I'm ready when you are.
And hopefully the robots will not have taken over by then.
No, I don't plan on it.
Thanks for listening to the Design Hive Stantec Buildings podcast. On our next episode, John sits down with architect Aaron Hodges to explore the growing appeal of compact living. They'll discuss how microhousing is emerging as a potential solution to housing attainability and what thoughtful design can do to make smaller spaces feel like home.